Welcome to the Spy Archive, where we uncover the untold stories of espionage. Today, we turn our gaze to a man who remains, to this day, one of espionage's most enigmatic figures, a master of deception whose legendary exploits still baffle historians and intelligence agencies alike. In the secret history of spies, his name surfaces only in whispers and riddles. This is the story of Fritz Kauders, the deceiver who outwitted the world. Every so often in the labyrinth of international intrigue, a figure emerges who simply refuses to fit the mold. Neither a dashing agent nor a brilliant scientist, neither muscle nor mind. Yet, somehow, both. Fritz Kauders embodied this anomaly. He was, at first glance, unremarkable. Plump, short, his hair a mess of dark curls, and his nose impossible to ignore. His smile was persistent, even sticky, as if he carried some private joke that the rest of the world would never quite grasp. That Kauders' early life hardly predicted greatness in the spy game. He was an inveterate schemer, floating from one questionable deal to another. Bribery, corruption, the fabrication of false identity papers. These were his crafts. But beneath the surface simmered a quality rarer than gold, an instinct to survive, no matter the odds, and a genius for shifting allegiance each time the wind changed. It was in the tense spring of 1939, just months before the world would plunge into war, that German intelligence officer Alfred Torkell first set his calculating gaze on Kauders. By then, Kauders had carved a shadowy path across Europe, leaving in his wake a trail of forged documents and improbably lucky escapes. Torkell saw potential, not the standard kind, but something more slippery and essential. With a mix of audacity and subtlety, he shepherded Kauders straight to the doorstep of the German intelligence service. This was a jaw-dropping feat in its own right. Kauders, son of a Jewish mother, stood among the most hunted people in the Reich. The Nazi security apparatus left no doubt about the fate of those with even a whisper of Jewish ancestry. Yet Torkell, skilled in persuasion, wasn't one to be constrained by dogma. He painted Kauders as an asset too precious to overlook, and remarkably, he won. Not even Kauders, as he slipped into the role of Agent Richard Klatt, fully understood the web into which he'd wandered. Because Torkell, that man of many masks, was already working another angle, a secret loyalty paid not to Berlin, but to Moscow. From his very first day on the job, Kauders was a double agent by design. News of this unusual arrangement swept quickly north, to Soviet intelligence headquarters. Here, patient minds saw opportunity. They saw in Kauders a master of importance to both the Reich and the Soviets, the perfect instrument for a grander, deeper deception than ever before. Soviet chiefs debated, argued, weighed their options. What did one do with a half-Jew turned Nazi spy who was every bit as interested in personal safety as ideology? Their answer: use him as a pipeline of carefully curated intelligence. For Kauders, the Soviets funneled secrets, some truly valuable, others precisely misleading, crafting a portfolio so compelling that the German handlers were blinded by their own praise. Berlin couldn't believe its luck. Here was their golden spy, effortlessly channeling blue-chip intelligence about Soviet troop movements, war production, and military strategy. They decorated Kauders, showered him with cash and privileges. Most valuable of all, they issued him a special Gestapo pass, an almost magical talisman in Nazi Germany, one that could make checkpoints disappear and suspicions melt away. Yet, in the cold calculus of Nazi bureaucracy, a key wish eluded Kauders: a certificate of Aryan ancestry. Such a document was more than status. It was life itself in those fevered days. No matter what favor he won with German intelligence, it remained forbidden. Still, the special directives that shielded him and the river of Soviet secrets he provided more than compensated for this lack. By early 1942, Kauders had requested a posting to Sofia, Bulgaria, equipped with a state-of-the-art radio transmitter direct to Berlin. From there, the information curved across war-torn Europe in constant streams. The Germans could hardly keep up with their accolades. Kauders' reputation grew, as did the trust placed in him at the darkest heights of Hitler's empire. But, of course, brilliance in espionage is measured not by the truth of what's given, but by the truth of what's withheld. In one of the Soviet intelligence masterstrokes, Kauders delivered to Berlin a package of detail even the most fevered analyst could hardly believe. The Soviets, he warned, were massing to attack the German 6th Army at Stalingrad. He transmitted orders, unit strengths, the names of field marshals, data so accurate that it seared itself into German plans. Yet, there was one subtle omission. The Soviets wouldn't attack head-on. Instead, their real intention was an encirclement, a steel trap that would cut through the fragile lines held by Romania and Hungary. As the Germans braced for direct confrontation, the Soviet armies rolled around them, snapped the jaws of their encirclement, and crushed the 6th Army. Over 250,000 soldiers, the Reich's pride, fell, marking Germany's greatest single defeat. After Stalingrad, whispers surged in Nazi circles. Could Richard Klatt, Fritz Kauders, have misled them by accident or by design? The answer, as always in espionage, depended on who you asked. Alfred Torkell, as always, orchestrated the narrative deftly. The facts were impeccable, he insisted. Interpretation failed, strategy failed, his man had not. The accusation faded, replaced again with gratitude, but the game was not done. 2 years later, Kauders again delivered dire news. The Soviet High Command planned a massive offensive against Germany's forces in southern Ukraine. Trusting him fully, the Wehrmacht redeployed, steel and blood converging in the south. The Red Army, with icy precision, strode instead into the center, 600 kilometers away. A blow so catastrophic that 500,000 Germans died, and the back of the Eastern Front fractured for good. Now, even the slowest minds in German intelligence began to see cracks in the Golden Spy's reputation. They reviewed his every file and correspondence. They noted with alarm his penchant for private side ventures, bribery, and murky deals in the shadows. Some even spotted that British intelligence, always a step ahead, had grown suspicious years before. The Germans, looking now with clear eyes, saw that Kauders' information, so often correct, so often fatal to Soviet units, should have long ago alarmed Moscow. Yet, the Soviets seemed untroubled. So, the inevitable began to crystallize. Kauders was feeding Germany exactly what Moscow wanted that a termination order was issued. Kauders, it was decided, must die, but the dark gods of chaos weren't done. In July 1944, a bomb shook Hitler's headquarters in a failed assassination attempt. In the aftermath, the Führer gutted the intelligence apparatus, dissolving whole branches, scattering their personnel. Kauders vanished into the bureaucratic smoke, his enemies losing their grip just as they were about to seize him. Astonishingly, rather than being purged, Kauders was reincorporated into the Nazi intelligence office in Hungary. No one dared challenge General Hans Guderian's recommendation that Kauders, even in detention, was too valuable, or perhaps too dangerous, to lose entirely. The war ended. Defeat poured over Germany like dark water. In May 1945, Kauders sat in his cell. And then, one afternoon, the lock turned and Alfred Torkell stood in the doorway. No questions, no fanfare. They escaped together, slipping across ruined landscapes into Austria, dodging first the Soviets and then the Americans in Vienna. Their paths finally diverged. Kauders was soon arrested by the American military police, accused now of being a Nazi spy. But if Kauders had mastered anything, it was talking his way from the hangman's noose. He convinced his captors he could serve as a prize, someone who could infiltrate Soviet circles and turn their secrets. The Americans took the bait, playing him as a tool against Stalin's expanding empire. For a while, the system worked. Kauders relayed Soviet information directly to Washington, snakes biting snakes. But the web was already tangled. Soviet intelligence was watching. Torkell, ever the survivor, was the first to warn his former Moscow friends that in February 1946, the Soviets struck. Disguised as American MPs, their snatch team attempted to spirit Kauders away from Vienna's bustling heart. But the Americans moved first, intercepting the plot. Kauders survived, but the message was clear. He was a marked man, prized by all, trusted by none. The very next day, under heavy American guard, Fritz Kauders vanished. No one could reconstruct how the short, round, unremarkable man melted away while a dozen armed men watched for outside threats. Both the Americans and the Soviets were left in disbelief and fury. Their agents scoured streets and back alleys from Vienna to Warsaw. He disappeared as silently as a ghost at dawn. And then, as if to taunt his enemies, Kauders popped back into view, offering his skills to American intelligence. This time, his overtures were refused. the Americans set a trap, determined to finally seize him. Once again, Kauders dissolved into the Vienna streets, gone before they could even tighten the net. Twice he vanished, twice he re-emerged, and after that, nothing. No trace, no body, no whisper in the underworld. Fritz Kauders, the deceiver, had achieved the impossible. He'd slipped through the grasp of every major intelligence agency of the 20th century, leaving them to nurse grudges and marvel at his audacity. Was it wits, luck, or some deeper, unknowable skill? To this day, no one knows. Not the Soviets, not the Americans, not even the shadowy few who still seek his legend in the archive's deepest vaults. Fritz Kauders remains, perhaps forever, the greatest missing page in the book of espionage, a man who made the world his playground, then simply walked away. And so, among all the icons and martyrs, the double agents and the defectors, he stands unique. The spy who fooled them all. The deceiver, lost to time, but never to legend. Until the next untold story, this is the Spy Archive.